Hi guys, what's up? My name is David and welcome back to my channel. So today I want to talk about something that I am surprised I have not talked about on this channel, but to me this fact is so obvious that I don't even think about the fact that some people still believe this stuff. Namely, that Viking helmets are supposed to have had horns. Now, if you have even somewhat of an understanding of Viking Age history, or just like history in general, you know that this is not true. But I don't want to focus on just the fact that this claim is incorrect. I want to explain further where this came from, where the inventors of this idea took their ideas from, and why it is still popular. So let's start at the beginning. And I have to say this, that just because Vikings specifically did not have horned helmets does not mean that any people at any time in history did not have horned helmets. Horned helmets are actually found in some places, even in Scandinavia, but these come from the Bronze Age, which is before the Viking Age. You can see them in the National Museum of Denmark, and even these helmets, which clearly seem to have had horns, don't look the same way that these Viking helmets are presented to look like. So horned helmets did exist throughout history, whether it is in Scandinavia or in other cultures. But these helmets are not the direct cause of why some people now still think that the Vikings had horned helmets. In the National Romantic period, there were people looking back at the Viking Age as a source of some kind of glorious Germanic past. So it started with Swedish and also Norwegian, Danish artists depicting their ideas of Vikings, and sometimes these depictions included horned helmets. But this is not what made it popular. In the 1870s, a playwright called Richard Wagner from Germany, well, what is now Germany, wrote an opera called Der Ring des Nibelungen, which means the Ring of the Nibelung. And this was loosely based on Nordic mythology that was then being used by the Germans as also their mythology, which is highly controversial and ultimately led to the use of Norse symbolisms by the Nazi Party in the 20th century, but that is a whole different story. But anyways, this was a very popular opera that kind of brought the Viking Age onto a broader European stage, and also brought with it ideas on how the Vikings look like. Because the costume designer for this play, Karl Emir Doppler, is the one that decided to use horned helmets. And because of the use of horned helmets in this opera, the Ring des Nibelungen, this is why horned helmets became associated with Vikings. Now, obviously, as I've mentioned before, this costume designer most likely did not just pull this out of nowhere. He was probably inspired by earlier Scandinavian depictions of Vikings with horned helmets, and obviously on finds of actual horned helmets, because archaeology was already blossoming in the 1900s, but dating methods were not as advanced as they are today, and people did not have as big of a historical and archaeological knowledge as they have today. So when horned helmets were found in Scandinavia, people couldn't know that they were not Viking, but they were Bronze Age. And since other cultures had horned helmets as well, I get the assumption that Vikings would have had horned helmets, especially since there are also written sources describing that people from Scandinavia had helmets with different kinds of ornaments. And that is not incorrect, but that doesn't mean they had horns on these helmets. When we look at actual Viking Age helmets, there's actually not a lot of them, and it is generally assumed that they were very expensive, and people preferred to fight either bareheaded or with some sort of leather cap. But the helmets that are preserved do have ornamentation. It's just not in the form of horns. And then we also have depictions of what is thought to be Odin, which is also sometimes depicted with these horns on his helmet. But upon closer inspection, you can see that these are not actually horns. These are two birds that he has on his head, which can then be translated into Hugin and Munin, the two ravens of Odin that are found in Norse mythology. But then again, these depictions of Odin also come from before the Viking Age, so it still is not in any way saying that horned helmets were used and worn in the Viking Age. So yeah, why do some people still think that Vikings had horned helmets? Because of this opera from the late 1900s that ingrained into people's minds that the Vikings should have horned helmets. And it just kept being associated with that, and only new popular media has to sort of undo this notion. Like, there's still a lot of comics, cartoons, and stuff that depicts the Vikings with horned helmets, but there's also a lot of new popular TV series like The Vikings, which is not necessarily 100% historically accurate, but at least they don't have horned helmets. So yeah, I think popular culture and popular media are bigger influences than some people might think, and also have been very big influences for longer than some people might realize. So now there are obviously like trends that people copy from the internet, but even before the internet, trends were a thing. You know, if this big opera writer incorporated horned helmets into his depiction of the Vikings that was supposed to have been based on real source material, then it would be reasonable to think that other playwrights would think, okay, if this man incorporates horned helmets into his play and this has so much success, then I am going to incorporate horned helmets into my play as well to have success too. And then the public keeps seeing these plays with horned helmets and thinks, okay, so the Vikings had horned helmets, because why would they assume that this was inaccurate? So it just stays in the collective public memory, and later and later generations keep using this material, this invented tradition, and then at some point someone decides to say, no, we know better, we should make something without horned helmets. And that might sound weird because people are used to these horned helmets, but that means that people can also get used to media without horned helmets, which is what is kind of being done now. And if you've been watching my channel for a while, I probably think you are educated enough to know that the actual Vikings did not wear horned helmets, but I still want to put this out if perhaps someone did not know this information yet, because like, it's totally fine if you're not actively interested in this stuff, you might not know where this all came from, and that's why I want to tell you. So yeah, this is not gonna be a very long video today. I just wanted to put this out there because I haven't said it yet, and I think it should be said. So yeah, no, the Vikings did not have horned helmets, but that also doesn't mean that horned helmets are completely historically inaccurate. That's all I have to say for this week. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day, week, month, year, whenever it is that you're watching this. Please, if you have any spare time, I would really love it if you watch some of my other videos, because I'm very close to getting monetized, but for that I need more watching hours. So if you can just put on a video in the background and do something else if you're not that interested. It takes a lot of time to make a video like this, even a very short video, and I am a full-time student also with a job, so I really love doing this, but it would be even better if I would be able to get paid for this stuff. So yeah, thank you for the support if you're still watching, and see you next week. Bye bye.